Kumlenen a blank Gemara. Today's daf is daf Kuf Mem Vav. So we're continuing to learn the subjects about if the marriage, doesn't work out and so on. What happens to the kedushin that he gave her? What happens to the presents, the gifts that he gave her? And we learned that two kinds of gifts. There are gifts that you give after the kedushin, as soon as they get engaged. That's one kind of gift that you give, and there's another kind of gift that you give that they should eventually bring to the house. And so we learned before that when it comes to gifts, we say that the gifts have to be returned. When it comes to the kedushin, we say that the kedushin does not have to be returned. And then we went a step further and we said even if she's the one who changed her mind, and even according to the opinion that says that when you give kedushin, it's not permanent, it's not forevermore. It's only if something happens from it. Kedushin is not litzibuinitnu. Doesn't matter. It's just not fixed. Nevertheless, we don't want it to be returned, even if she changes her mind, because we're worried that people will see the kedushin being returned. They're going to think that that the entire marriage never took place in the first place. It was a mekartas, and she's a free woman, which means that this man now is able to marry this woman's sister because he was never married to her in the first place, which is wrong. Anyway, so now that we've raised the idea of gifts, so the next Mishnah is going to tell us that the gifts that he gave depends on a few variables. Variable number one is if we're talking about that the marriage broke up between engagement and the marriage. So there's in between. What happens is usually there's a thing called the Sudas Erison, or he would go to visit the in-laws after they got engaged and make a big party. So there's a big difference if the party took place or the party didn't take place. We are going to say that if the son-in-law, future son-in-law, or current son-in-law, went to the party, that means he's very happy of what happened, and he's meichel that even if it doesn't work out afterwards, since he gained already some satisfaction, he is meichel the gifts that he already gave. But if there was no party there whatsoever, then he can collect. We're up to the mission of Kuf Mem Vav Amaral. He can take back all the things. So that's one variable. Was there a party enough? And the other thing is, what kind of gifts was it? Was it perishable or non-perishable items? And we're going to say that this concept of being meichel is only talking about perishable items. So you need perishable items and a party before you say it stays there. But if it's non-perishable items, then we don't care party, not party. You take it back. And if it's perishable items, it depends if it was a party or not a party, whether he's meichel or not. And then we have another situation where he told her this. Sometimes he says to her, "Here, I'm giving you gifts. Bring it to the house when we eventually settle down." And he wants to start, building up all stock for a new house. And that's one kind of gift. Another gift is for her to keep with her father. When we say that he's meichel, we're talking about he's meichel the things that he said that you keep in your house. The things that he said, bring it to the marriage, bring it with you when we move to my house. Those things he's not meichel. He clearly said, I want it for us. There's no us anymore. He wants it back. So there are three different factors here. That's how the Rashbam learned the Mishnah. So let's learn the Mishnah. We're up to the Kuf Mevav Rav Kum Len Blat Gemara. Says the Mishnah, Hashaleach Sivloinos Lebeis Chamav. Okay, he got engaged. So it's very important that they had to get engaged. There was no engagement. He's just sending up. They just talked about it, and they were going to get engaged. And he sent a gift. Those gifts definitely go back. Hashaleach Sivloinos Lebeis Chamav. He sent presents to give to his father-in-law's house, which means Zeraya father-in-law. They got engaged. Shalach Shameya Mana. He sent there the value of 100 mana, but Edison. Sudas Chassan, and they had that Sudas Chassan, so they had a party for that event, for the Edison. So at that moment, he was jubilant, he was happy. Afilu bedinner, as long as the value is a minimum of a dinner, which we had yesterday in the Gemara, that's what a person needs. A dinner and a zuz, the same thing. Ein on nigbin, he cannot take it back. So they were engaged and they had the party, and he gave presents, and then the marriage falls apart. Died, she died, he died. He changed his mind. We'll see later about she changing your mind. In these cases it remains there. But if he did not eat a meal there, he takes it all back. And the Gemara will say we're talking about over here perishables. Non-perishables always takes it back. Now, according to the Rashbam, this is case number 2. According to other Rishonim, this is explaining case number one. So let's do Rashbam. Okay, let's do the other Rishonim first. Shalach Slivlainus Berubin, but this doesn't always apply. If it's considered like Slivlainus Berubin, plenty. When I send you plenty of gifts, it's going to remain a long time. So this is another way of saying I gave you non-perishable items. Those he takes back. I don't care if we had a meal or not. They always go back because they're non-perishable. But if it's perishable items, so Mortin is generally, even if I gave you a lot, but it doesn't have a long shelf life. So therefore it's like Mortin. Then you cannot take it back if you had a meal, because definitely you're meichel her, even for the marriage falls apart, you're meichel. That's how many of the Rishonim learn. The Rashbam learns, no, there's another case. If he clearly spelled it out, and why we make a difference, Merubin and Muwatin, is because generally speaking, you won't spell it out. Bring this to the family home unless it's a lot. If it's only a few items, you're not going to tell her that. And if it's only a few items, he probably says, for you, we have 12 months between the engagement and the marriage. Use it, enjoy it. So it's a new case where he spelled it out. And there's others trying to say, it's so obvious. Why would a Mishnah have to say it? If he clearly said, these items I'm giving you to bring to the marriage, clearly you're saying, but if you don't get married, it's not yours. So why do you need a Mishnah to say that? That's what they say. Says the Gemara, the Ram will say, no, maybe he's Michael. That's why the Mishnah says he is not. Amar says, Rabbi, Dafka dinner, the meal has to be worth a dinner. And Abel probably if it's worth less than a dinner, lie. It's worth less than a dinner. It's not considered a meal. What kind of party is that? And therefore he's not going to be Michael. Oh, I had such a great party. So the Gemara, and yesterday we learned all about parties. Everything was commensurate to the simcha, to the money he gave, and so on. So the Gemara, Pshita did it now. What's Rabbi adding? The Mishnah says it has to be a party for dinner. Nay, Mao, I would have thought, well, really, it doesn't matter what the value is. The fact that they made a party for you, even they gave a few pickles, that's a party. I did Tani dinner, so why does they dinner? Urcha the milsuk Tani. Because generally, that's the minimum. When you learned yesterday, Gemara, that's usually the minimum party, that value of a party. Kamashalon, no, the Mishnah is Dafka. It has to be a dinner zuzah. Says the Gemara, let's understand. It says the Mishnah, Ochal Tani ate a party. What about Shasa? What if they don't have mashka? They drank. But they did it in honor, the Tanoim or the engagement. Mai, is that enough of a simcha that he will be moichel now, or not? It says who to not that he had to come to the Shrer's house. What about shluchai? Mai, he sent. Let's say he sent a shliach, and the shliach was about the party. Is that enough for him to be so happy that he's moichel the presents he gave or not? What happens then? It said, what about it says the Sham that he ate at his father's house. What about Shogula? They made a party and they sent him the food from the party. Is that enough for him to feel that he's part of the party? It was COVID and he couldn't join, whatever. So is that enough to feel that he's part of the party and because the party's in his name, and therefore he's already happy and so on, and he's moichel or not? Toshma. Well, we won't know all the answers, but we'll try to resolve some of them. The person, he said 100 wagons of barrels of wine, barrels of oil, and silver, and gold, well, what a man, and all kinds of clothing, Zayn clothing, and all of these in a wagon, and all of these he did it because of a simcha. We're still talking about wedding marriages unraveling, whether the gifts have to go back or not. But Omad al Pesach Beis Chama, when he stood at the doorway of his father-in-law's house, he didn't walk into the house. He stood outside, and they brought him out a cup of hot tea. Yeah, the Shasi drank it for mace, and he died on the spot. What did they do to Mace? So, and what happened? So, what's it in here? So he didn't enter the house, and he didn't eat. He drank, and these are two of the questions that we had. Exactly. Was that enough that he was at that moment? He was so happy, he was so jubilant that they made a party for him that he's moichel. If the marriage falls apart, for example, he dies. She can keep everything that he brought, and it's quite a bit of it brought it. This halach was brought by the head of that area for the chamim, and they all said like as following. And this is where they introduced the idea of whether it's perishable or non-perishable, because our mission doesn't mention it. And that is, they got engaged, he brought her presents, and the question, and then it didn't work out. He died, she died, he changed his mind. What happens to these presents? So our Mishnah said it depends if there's a party, not a party. No party, he wants it back. If there was a party, he was happy that moment. In that moment already, he was Michael, it's all hers. He wasn't even imagining that things wouldn't work out. So he's Michael, he gave it wholeheartedly. Now the Braisa comes and adds another variable. It depends if it's a perishable or non-perishable. Sivloina, so Asuyin Libalis, those gifts which are generally are perishable items, a nigbin. That's the ones the Mishnah talks about. Party, perishable, you don't take it back. But for longevity, nigbin, you take it back. Shamamino, so what do we learn from the story? I feel a shasa, you don't have to eat a meal, a party, even just drinking is already enough of a party. And Shamina, I feel a pachas medina. And we also know from Elochaida, even less than dinner, how much is drink worth? We don't say it was mashke, it might have been hot tea. How much is hot tea ready? We don't get engaged. Before then, it's not engagement. Yeah, okay, but they don't think that it's engagement. So no. You know, first of all, they talked about in the Rishonim in town. Even a marriage, you be married a whole pocket 12 months before, otherwise give certain things back. But even though they give a ring and technically they might be engaged, but that's not their kavanah. So this whole thing is to do with kavanah. That he's so happy. No, they're so happy that they're engaged Ma'atoida that he's giving. But if in his mind he doesn't think he's engaged Ma'atoida, right? In his mind, if he breaks away right now, you don't need to get or anything else. So then it isn't. I feel Pachodina. I'm going to ask you who told Pachodina. Not I for me. You know why? Interesting. Look what it says here. This guy is obviously a rich guy. Who tells you the Leshachkele Marganisa? Maybe he ground up a precious stone, the Shavia Alpha Zuzah. It seems that in those days the rich people would take precious stones, grind it up, mix it with liquid, and the ashken drinking is supposed to be therapeutic. How do you know that this, look what kind of rich man he is? He gave 100 barrels of wine and oil, everything else. He might have taken who said it's only worth a dinner? And okay, yeah, but they're all falls to the side. Yeah, they're all falls to the side. Here, he drinks the whole thing. And we're talking about the Mechutner. The Mechutner passed him out Chamin. If he's rich, chances are the Mechutner also is rich. So therefore, the Mechutner might have grounded up. So there's no Raif me that's less than the dinner. You make an assumption. You can't make Paskin Halacha, and take something away from him based on this assumption. So okay, but let's bring the third question. I feel the Shogrula. You asked the question if he's not there, but he was outside. He's stayed at home, and they sent him as he said part of the party, and sure enough, and here you see, he stood outside. He didn't even enter the house. Well, that's also a raya. Dilma called Pesach Beis Chamav ki Beis Chamav. Standing there in the vestibule or outside the house, he's still like part of the house. Now, it's a big machek to show you what exactly does it mean perishable items. What's a perishable item? You'd think perishable item means food. That's perishable. Anything else? Money's not perishable. But the Rashbam, when he gives an example of things which are not perishable, why do we need an example? He could have said the easiest thing is he gave money. Rashbam says, now, wouldn't be Medaik Rashbam otherwise, but there are the Shainim who say clearly that money is a perishable item. People have holes in their pockets. They have money, they can't keep it. They always spend it. So it's a perishable, because money, he says, money is a perishable item. No, so they're using that expression to say that people don't know how to hold. I mean, I know people, including myself, sometimes, you have money, you have to spend it, you have the urge, you have to do something with it, otherwise what's the point sitting there? So that's called a perishable item. A non-perishable item is like tachshit is over chesef. Regular clothes is a perishable item because you use it a number of times, and so on and so forth, it wears out. But then if you got 3 or 4 suits, or something like that. So maybe the first suit is perishable, the other ones are not. How many people own suits today anyway? You have one suit for the 2 chasses together, buy the 2 a year, that's it. We're kapot on Shabbos. Okay, boy, Lou, I have a question. Mahu sheyeshalish. Okay, you tell me if it's less than a dinner. Let's say it's a half a dinner, right? You said half a dinner. What's a half a dinner? Half a dinner, there's no mechil at all, or you only mechil half. No, a dinner, you mechil everything you gave her, that's perishable. But if you gave me a half a dinner party, you're so cheap, I'll only mechil half the dinner, half the perishable I gave you. Is that pshat? Or pshat is no, less than dinner. I'm not really happy. Nothing happened. That's a question. Question number 1. Question number 2, Shevach Sivloines, where let's say it's a non-perishable and you give it back to me. Let's say he gave her animals. And you have to get back to me in the meantime while Tula's married, because 12 months, 6 months down the track, then suddenly, let's say she dies. So it goes back to him. What happened to her baby calves? The animals gave birth. Shevach. Who gets that Shevach? Does it stay with the family or does it go back to him? Kiv, the Shaila is Kiv on the East New day. If the animals are still around. We're talking about a case here is, let's say, that if the animal was still around and got better, and you would have to give that, let's say the animal got fatter and so on and so forth, you would have to give the fatter animal back to the guy. Now, the animals, are, you shachted it, they're no longer here, you're giving it the equivalent money. But since the animal would have been there, you would have to give it back to him original. So anything comes from the animal comes back to him. If they got lost, they got stolen, they have to pay. And what do they pay? Only the value of the animal that they received at the time that you gave them the present. So therefore, it's in their issues that it improved, and any benefits is theirs. Teiku, and all these questions. Teiku, and since somebody's he doesn't take it. Boy, what happens? Okay, you just said at this holding that it goes back is only in perishable items. What happens to the perishable item, but it didn't perish? Like those are showing you, he gave money, but didn't spend it. So what happens then? You said perishable items stay with her, but what happens? She still has it. No, she doesn't have to pay back, find a way to compensate it. But what happens? She still has it. Let's give it back enough. Boy, Rabba, see, the pearl didn't perish. Ma, what's it in then? Toshma, coming here. Zu halacha hel rabachasal bin Chachamim. This halacha was brought up by the Bachasal before the Chachamim. But Usha, but Amma, they said, Sivloinus ha'asuyin libolu. This is what we had before. And those gifts that are generally perishable items, ain't nigbim. You don't. If there was a meal, you don't take it back. Kedushin and a meal. Usha ain't asuyin libolu. But if it's not perishable, nigbim. My love. So when it says here perishable items, it doesn't say that and it perished. It just says perishable items. It's like a category. My love, afagav the balu. If it falls under the category of perishable items, even though the pearl she still has it, didn't perish yet. Yeah. No. Dafka the balu. It's a perishable item, and it perished. In other words, there's no raya one way or another. You can't.
I gave you a basket of fruit.
No, but she has to pay it back then. The value. So, so therefore, no raya one way or another. You can learn this way. You can learn that way. It says if you had the end of the Mishnah, he gave her only a few that she should use for herself. You don't take it back. Things in the second part of the mission, if he gave it to her to use for herself and the marriage falls apart, he does not get that back. As Ram learned, he spoke about it openly that this is for you. Tagmar, yeah. So he basically what do you call it? Yeah. So we see from here, it's giving an open-ended rule. Right? It doesn't say who should bolu, giving an open-ended rule that I gave this for you. So it means even if it didn't perish, the pile is hers. So we see from clearly here, as long as it falls under the category of perishable items, it's already considered perished. Tag Marava, no, it's talking about Beyeva Vesevkasa. It's talking about little hats that they used to use, and because it has so little value, it's such a trivial item. He's Michael, whether it's still there or not there. I didn't want it back. Some things you give away, you just don't want it back. It doesn't matter if you still have it because it's worthless. So there's no raya from here, from the Mishnah, that if it's a more choshev thing and a perishable item, but it didn't perish, what happens? All right, but Ma'aseh Banech is the story of the person, Sheshogel, if he sent to his wife, to his kala, in her house. Yayin Chodesh, brand new wine. The Shemen Chodesh, brand new oil. The clay Pishtan Chodesh, and brand new linen. In other words, it just grew. Bat said as a Shavuos. Now the Shavuos is not the right season. It's not yet the season. And yet he gave her new stuff. My Kamasan, what do we need to know the story for? So he gave her new stuff, Shavuos. He's coming to teach you the chashivus of Eretz Yisrael. That at Yisrael, even though it's not the season, that it's not the season, but at Yisrael, things grow so well, and sometimes even before the season, it matures. And that he's trying to compliment that Yisrael. The same Rabbi Yehuda said, called Oil Bava Yisrael, Oil Basei. He's trying to say, but never, I believe at Yisrael, just that bubbles and Mokum Taylor, like we're going to meaty. Or the Toyin Tanostain, if he says if the marriage unraveled or she died, he says, look, this is what I gave, I want it back. And people say, impossible. Shavuos time is the wrong season. And believe him because it's possible for it to happen next wrong. Another story, they told him his wife had tutzani. She can't smell. And this is a big problem. She's going to cook because she can't smell whether she burnt the food, she didn't burn the food. And this is so this is considered a mum. If remember we learned a mum shebegolu, he can't come back later and say, oh, I didn't realize that she had the mum. So mum shebegolu, he couldn't know. This is a mum shebeseised. How do you know she can smell? She can't smell. So therefore, he can come along and say that they weren't married. So the whole thing is a make a toss. So he heard rumors that you can't smell. I actually know quite a few people that don't have the ability to smell. Especially a lot of people have COVID. They lost their ability to smell and didn't come back. So Ishtoi Tatarnisi. I wonder what the mock of the word Tatarnis is. But she can't smell. So he wanted to check her. He wanted to check her out. He entered after her to check her out. Now he didn't want to openly ask her, "Can you smell?" Because she'll lie and say, "Yes, I can." So what's the point? He wanted to test her, to tease out of her the truth without her realizing, like a Messiah Lefituma. Amala, he said to her, I smell a smell of a radish. Machlek is showing him the pshat is taka was a radish. He wanted to hear what your response is, or there wasn't a radish; it was a date, and he wanted to hear what she would say. If she said, "Yeah, I smell the radish," also he knows that she's lying. Amar, she said, "Man yoel, I wish you'd give me the dates of your." So either if you learned the pshat that it was a date, so she's saying, "I know it's a date," so them know she gave an answer and whatever, or she was smart enough to know that he was asking, he had a radish and he was smart enough to know what she was saying, but you want to openly say, "Oh, I smell the radish also," because she knows that he wouldn't believe her. So she said, "I wish I had a date so we can eat together with the radish." So now he doesn't really know, does she smell or is she just very smart? Anyway, we'll eat together. And all of a sudden, Nafal Allah Khurba. After she's made that statement, that house would the house collapsed. But Mason, she died. Now, what's he bring her into a Khurba for? Khurba is a house, schwach, it's a dilapidated house. He almost killed her. I mean, he did kill her in a way, but that's on this figure here. Since he didn't go into for any other reason other than checking her out whether she should stay married with him or not, Mesa ain't a Yasha. She dies as a Yasha. Big machlekes are showing here what's going on. The Rashbam learned he makes a big chiddush, which other Hashem don't know where he got it from. The Rashbam paskins that the moment this talking about a case when they're married already. Because if they're only engaged, we used to come in, a husband's a Yash and his wife when she's only engaged. So they're married already. No, but we learned in Gittin that if the Kimishanas and Elagosh, the moment a man wants to divorce his wife, he loses the rights of the dividends of the Nichse Malay, the estate that she brought in, the payers, he loses. The Rashbam takes it from there. The moment a man decides to divorce his wife, he no longer inherits her. Big finish. All the Shaykh said, where did you get that from? It's not mucker, no base at all. This is the basis right here. Can't be talking about they're engaged. Why should he, Yashner? Talking about they were married. And because since he was thinking of divorcing her, because if he found out she can't smell, he wanted to end the marriage. So since he already Kimishanas and Ein of the Gorsha, he loses the right to Yashner. The other Rishonim say, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" So this, some of the Rishonim learn. I'll just tell you some of the Rishonim learn. They learn shot like this. They were engaged. No, but engaged woman can yashin. But if you bring the yichud is if you bring her into what exactly the yichud. So if you follow the Rishonim would say that yichud is bringing her into your house. That's why we have yichud room afterwards. By bringing her into his churba, that's his house. And he was thinking like this: if she can smell, we're married. This is my house, we're married. And if she can't smell, and maybe the way did it. And if she can't smell, then I'm not getting married. So it could be that they were going to be married right then and there, and he would be able to yashin her. But because he didn't make up his mind yet, because he didn't know what her answer was, it wasn't clear. Did she really know, or she's very, very smart and she understood what I'm trying to say? So they're not really married, and therefore you can't yashin her. So therefore, that's a question: Nasuya, not Nasuya. Yeah, interesting. So the Gemara said, now the machlekes really is totally is if Yerushas Habal is Ma'atayda Midrabban. If you learn Yerushas Habal Ma'atayda, just because you decided to divorce her, where does it say you lose these rights? But if you learn Yerushas Habal Midrabban, the whole thing is that Takana Midrabban so that he should feel committed and do everything else. The moment he's not interested anymore, maybe according to Rashbam and those who show him Rashbam hold that the Takana Chachamim to benefit him is gone. Why should they benefit him when he wants a divorce? Then we write Sablanus Muatin Shetasham Chulu Yosef Robin sat the Saba Kavera Papa Robin, the old one, the different Robin. This is Robin Saba who sat before that Papa. The Yosef come. This is what he said. Bain Shemesa he whether she died. Bain Shemes who whether he died. Harder who or whether he changed his mind. So we learned before already. The Kedushin does not go back, stays with her. Either because Kedushin Litabuinit and Kedushin, stays there forever, or because she can say, I'm ready, to get married or whatever it is, or and he gave it to her wholeheartedly. Sivloinus Hadri. Sivloinus, the non-perishable items, I'm learning now like the Bama Moses trying to learn, they go back. Ma'achal Mishnah Lahadr, food and drink, which are perishable items, they don't go back, provided there was a meal. Harder but if she changes her mind, harder feel the kitchen of the ark, then even a little bundle of vegetables, in a good a little asparagus, tiny little thing, she has to give it all back. If she changes her mind, everything goes back. There's a Derim Nagash. Somebody's trying to want to learn that Ravin actually doesn't mention a word here about having a party. That the Ravin actually is Pascal not like our Mishnah, and he says absolutely makes no difference. Yeah, party, no party. This is the final halacha. That a perishable item stays, non-perishable item you get back. They said, but however, if she changed her mind, but we did say if she changed her mind, the kedushin does not go back. If she changed her mind, the kedushin does not go back, because Shema Yemru Gamema said, because of the Gzeira that people will think that it was never kedushin in the first place, so this guy will be able to marry her sister. But the food she ate up already, she has to give back the value. But the value she gives back, or the family gives back, if she does it, the value is a third less. Because if they would have known that the marriage would not have gone ahead, they wouldn't have eaten such expensive cuts of meat, or they would have eaten something less, would eaten cheaper. So therefore, this is a rule we had quite a few times. In other places where we say the father Nichlan Porter, the father Ashula, the father died, left behind a borrowed Porter, had no idea, and they thought it was their own, and they shechted it, so they pay May Basa Bezel. Because had they known, they would not have eaten so much. They would have eaten the cheaper cuts and so on. And how much is they must Bezel? Atilsa, 1/3 less than the true value. Next Mishnah. This is the Mishnah of Shchibra. We're talking about Shchibra as somebody who is dying. And it's generally like this. If you give a gift, you can't. So the only way that the gift gets transferred is you have to make a kinyan. And then you write it down, but you have to make a kinyan. You have to tell them right down in the start if you want to start. And once you gave a kinyan, once you made a transaction, there's no longer you can't revert. You can't unravel it. It's done. But if you're a mitzvah machmas moiser, which means that you're dying, and you're saying and you add, I feel that I'm dying, so I want to distribute everything. Then I don't care what percentage of your assets you're giving away, all of it, part of it, whatever you're giving away, you're clearly stipulated, or you clearly this told us is because you're dying. So therefore, on the one hand, you don't need a kinyan. You don't need a kinyan. If he says this is what's going to happen, I want this house to belong to this person and that car, it happens. But on the other hand, if he recovers and he doesn't die, everything falls apart. Because he clearly is an umdana, we assume that he only said it. But then you have where he doesn't spell out machmas misa. But he's a shchimera. He's on the deathbed in the last throes of his life. He's dying. He doesn't say because I'm dying. Then we say as follows. If he gives everything away, that's clearly because he thinks he's dying. And he doesn't think he needs any belongings anymore, doesn't need any more food, nothing. And therefore, on the one hand, you don't need a kinyan. On the other hand, if he recovers, everything falls apart. But if he retains something for himself, even if he's dying, and he said, "Give him this," but he kept himself in an apartment, or he kept something for himself, then everything else is considered a regular matana. Because if you thought you're dying, what do you keep up? What do you keep the unit for who? So obviously, he didn't. He's giving it as a matana. Then you need a kinyan. If you don't kinyan, nothing happens. On the other hand, if there was a kinyan, he cannot, even if he recovers, doesn't get it back. Okay, these are the dinim. Says the Mishnah. Who wrote all of his assets to somebody else, but he left something for himself. So therefore, matanosa kayemes, his matana, even if he recovers, stays, provided he made a kinyan. Because if he did not make a transaction, if he didn't make a kinyan, nothing happened, because this is not a shchimera. There's no takana here, because he kept something for himself. Obviously, he still believed in the back of his mind that he needs something to live with. But if he gave all of it away, Then even though he didn't spell it out, it's clearly a matnosa kayemis, which means on the one hand, whatever he said happens, but if he recovers, everything falls apart. Said the Gemara, so Montana, who's the author that says, I think it's Umdana, who's the one that says, he didn't spell it out, I'm doing it because I'm dying. We just know that he's dying. Probably this is what he's thinking in his mind. Who believes we go after Umdana? Taisha says over here, and he just alerts you that there's a Gemara in Kedushin where we talk about the idea of Umdana. Guys, about how the Gemara that we had, how the Mesic out of Yisrael, a guy is traveling to Yisrael, he sells his house, then a war broke out. Can he get his house back? So there's all kinds of levels of Umdana. And when it's very, very clear, it's patently clear, almost clear, probably clear, and therefore we have so many machlekes, and it's really a question of how clear it is. Taisa says, look at my long taste over there. We talks about in order to try and talk about different Umdana the Muchach, and within Umdana the Muchach there are levels. So like we can see right here. So who's the one that says it's Umdana? The guy is dying. He didn't say I'm giving it because I'm dying. But we're assuming that if he's in his deathbed and he gave it all away, why did he give it away? Because he thought he's not going to make it. But if he does make it, we give it right back. Why? Because we're assessing his mind. Who holds of this further that even though he didn't spell it out, didn't make it tonight, we assess this what he meant, and we will deal accordingly. Nachman says that's Reb Shimon ben Assi. The Tanya we looked. Reb Shimon ben Assi said, we even had before the Gemara. The son went overseas. His son went overseas traveling, and he heard that his son died. No, right after so while the son was alive, he didn't know anything. But now that he heard his son died, the cost of kol nechazalach, he wrote it. That all my nechasim is my best friend. No family left. Suddenly his son appeared. Matana. Opinion number one is too bad, too late. You gave a matana. You didn't stipulate because my son died. You gave it. You gave it. Rav Shimon says, "Ein matana matana," because we assess his mind. If he would know that it's not alive, he never given his friend. He never given his friend. Rav Sheshes says, you say Shimon ben Assi who hold Umna. I say Shimon Shazuri. The time you learned, we also had it before. What do you call it? But in the beginning, they would say, somebody taking out to the gallows and chains. And as he's being led to the gallows, he says, "Kiss forget lishti, right to get to my wife." But he didn't say give it to her. And usually you have to say kiss tanu, but he didn't say it. But he's going to be killed. Why is he writing again in the first place? Because he wants to protect her, not that she shouldn't have to be stuck with his brother. They can give it. Why? Because we assess in his mind that that's what he wanted to do. And then they added another layer. Even if somebody's traveling overseas and he says kislu, right? Even though he didn't say give, why is he telling to write? Probably because in case he doesn't come back home, she should remain laguna. So she should have a get.
Shama, not Ruach. He's about to die.
Yeah, only by get we're saying this. It doesn't say about other things. By get could one help her out. We're saying only by get. And not kishu. We're saying he had to say kishu. If he didn't say kishu, you can't do it. Yeah. But therefore, we don't want to exacerbate his death. We don't make his death sooner. And which brings his death forward. That doesn't apply here. Doesn't apply here at all. But here, they're going to kill him. Now, he's not dying. But here, it's the get, because in Guna, we want to help her out. Those are even. Rav Shimon, not Iguna, this case is even. But Yitzim Shiyada, it's a case of Iguna. Rav Shimon, or even. Rav Shimon Shazuri goes, let's lay more. Af HaMasukin. Even somebody is a Masukin, now he's nearly dying, and he says, write a get to my wife, he probably meant give it to her as well. So again, Umdana. More or less, they're both saying the same thing. Why does Nachman of Sheish arguing? Why does Nachman just say Shizuri? It's clear. Masukin, it's so much close. It's like a Shchivara case, and we just assume. Shani Hosh Nama Kisu. No. Here he added one word. He said Kisu. So we say to him, why write a get? The fact that he told you to write a get, it's more than just Umdana. He told you to write. You don't write a get to hang up on a wall. He wrote a get in order to give it. He's so mavuvul, so he didn't have a chance to finish off his statement. This is much more Umdana than Muchach than a normal case of Umdana. No, Rav Sheshes in my time, Lemukh Shimon Manasseh is a good point. So why did Rav Sheshes bring Shimon Manasseh before, where he said, his son went away, and he heard that he died. And that's why he wrote it off. And Hashem ben Asya says that whatever he gave away is worthless. Mamash umdana. Umda the muchach shiny. That's an umda the muchach. Why is it muchach? When the son was with him, he never wrote, I'm giving my assets to my friend. It's only after he heard that his son died that he wrote it. That's mamish clear. Umda the muchach. It's more than a shchimra lying in bed. So therefore, I don't want to bring a knife there. I need something a bit more closer to a case of a shchimra. Who's also the following Mishnah? A guy was sick, and he's lying in his bedridden. And somebody said to him, "The chasich lemi, who do you want to give your assets to? You distribute your assets to?" He said, "It appears to me, sheyeshli ben, I have a son. But now that I don't have a son, then the chasich plan I'm giving to that person." So the preamble was, I thought I had a son, but now that I don't have a son, so he didn't say it's on the condition that I don't have a son. He's just telling you, what's going through his mind. But it's an pretty strong that he's giving it away only because he had a son. Sick lying in bed. Who's the asset? It appears to me my wife is pregnant. I thought my wife was pregnant, so I was expecting heir. Now that my wife is not pregnant. Is the chasel plan? I'm giving my friend. Again, it's not a tanai, it's a preamble. The noida, suddenly we found out he had a son. Shitaka was pregnant. Ain matanose matana. The matana unravels because we're saying it's like an umna. Definitely, he would not have given had he known he had a son. So that's the case of Shimon ben Asir. The case before we had when the son went overseas and he thought he died. So no, this is different. Afilu temer rabbanan. Because he started off, it didn't. If he would have said, "I'm giving the fremde," and then he found that he had a son, and we started working out, had he known, what do we do? That's the machlekes Shimon. Here he clearly introduced this thing, because my son, even though he didn't make it lost of Tanai, that's what he meant. But in fact, the Kohen Makorlich. So what was your question in the first place? Isn't that obvious? Nay, I would have thought, he's not making it Tanai. He's just lamenting, Never I lived the whole life, and I don't have any years. Like Avraham Avinu said, "Who am I going to give everything to? I have nothing here." Not that he's making conditional on that, and I'm going to give it to my friend. We would have thought, and Kamash Shalom, that no, that is that even the Rabbanan will be made in this case. Yeah, that the Rabbanan will be made in this case when he gave that introduction. It's mamish like the Muchach. Even the Rabbanan will be made that if he had a son, he wouldn't have done it. Tomorrow, Mr. Shep.
Thanks, Bob.